Kiai Haji, pendiri Perserikatan Muhammadiyah yang memiliki spirit mencerdaskan, mencerahkan, dan berkemajuan sejak dulu hingga sekarang. Buya Hamka, sosok ulama intelektual bangsa yang menginspirasi kami membentuk generasi muda yang unggul dalam kecerdasan spiritual, intelektual, emosional, dan sosial. Universitas Muhammadiyah Profesor Dr. Hamka atau biasa disebut UHAMKA hadir di tengah-tengah kota metropolitan Jakarta dengan lokasi perkuliahan yang mudah dijangkau berbagai sarana transportasi ibu kota. Kemudahan aksesibilitas meningkatkan efektivitas agar generasi muda bisa lebih mudah mendapatkan pendidikan yang lebih berkualitas. UHAMKA, universitas yang mengedepankan nilai al-Islam dan kemuhammadiyahan dalam proses belajar mengajar dan di segala aspek kehidupan, untuk membentuk lulusan yang unggul secara intelektual maupun spiritual.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Dengan lisensi akreditasi A yang kami miliki, lulusan UHAMKA bisa dengan mudah memasuki dunia kerja yang serba kompetitif maupun sukses dalam berwirausaha. Karena UHAMKA membekali pribadi setiap lulusan berkarakter, cerdas, kreatif, dan inovatif di era industri 4.0 yang serba digital.
UHAMKA memiliki 10 fakultas dengan sarana dan prasarana perkuliahan modern, seperti Fakultas Farmasi dan Sains, didukung oleh tenaga pengajar ahli dengan sarana dan prasarana perkuliahan yang modern untuk mencetakkan lulusan yang handal dalam penelitian kesehatan.
Alasan saya memilih di UHAMKA adalah karena alat-alat yang lengkap dan tenaga-tenaga pengajar di sini adalah dosen-dosen yang profesional.
Salah satu studi unggulan adalah penelitian uji kehalalan bahan makanan. Bidang penelitian ini sering menjadi rujukan perusahaan besar dalam menentukan kehalalan suatu produk. Fakultas Ilmu Kedokteran dengan fasilitas laboratorium yang komprehensif menerapkan sistem belajar mengajar yang selalu bersinergi antara pengembangan teori dengan praktek perkuliahan. Fakultas Ekonomi dan Bisnis membentuk lulusan yang handal di bidang ekonomi dan bisnis keislaman dengan salah satu studi yang diterapkan adalah filantropi keislaman. Sarana perkuliahan juga dilengkapi dengan perpustakaan dengan bahan pembelajaran yang fokus pada studi ekonomi, akuntansi, manajemen, serta perbankan keislaman. Selain itu, terdapat juga laboratorium bank syariah. Fakultas Teknik menerapkan sistem pembelajaran yang mengasah kecerdasan dan kemahiran mahasiswa dalam menguasai bidang studi pilihannya, sehingga dapat berkontribusi langsung pada kemajuan teknologi serta mempersiapkan masuk dunia kerja. Selain itu juga agar mereka mampu mengukir prestasi pada berbagai kompetisi inovasi teknologi.
Kami dari program studi teknik elektro dan alhamdulillah inilah hasil karya kita, robot pemadam api.
Fakultas Keguruan dan Ilmu Pendidikan. Fakultas Keguruan dan Ilmu Pendidikan memberikan pendidikan secara intensif kepada calon tenaga pengajar maupun pendidik sehingga setiap lulusan memiliki kecakapan sikap, pengetahuan, keterampilan umum, dan keterampilan khusus pada skala nasional maupun internasional, meneruskan reputasi UHAMKA sebagai penyedia profesi guru yang handal dan terpercaya.
Alasan saya kuliah di sini karena akreditasi A. Telah di sana segala gitu daftar di UHAMKA.
Dalam mencetak profesi guru yang profesional, proses perkuliahan didukung oleh fasilitas dan metode perkuliahan terkini, mempersiapkan tenaga pengajar yang dapat berkontribusi langsung pada kesejahteraan masyarakat, membentuk masa depan generasi muda bangsa yang cerdas. Fakultas Agama Islam. Fakultas Agama Islam hadir membentuk tenaga pengajar pendidikan agama Islam yang juga mampu mengelola lembaga berbasis keislaman. Fakultas Psikologi mengembangkan ilmu psikologi yang terintegrasi dengan nilai Islam untuk menghadirkan lulusan yang unggul di berbagai profesi ilmu psikologi. Fakultas Ilmu-Ilmu Kesehatan menghasilkan tenaga kesehatan yang unggul melalui pengembangan ilmu-ilmu kesehatan untuk meningkatkan kesejahteraan serta kesehatan masyarakat. Fakultas Ilmu Sosial dan Ilmu Politik dengan program studi utama ilmu komunikasi membentuk lulusan yang unggul di berbagai bidang ilmu komunikasi dengan dukungan pengajar profesional serta fasilitas perkuliahan yang dibuat sama dengan dunia kerja nyata. Sehingga setiap lulusan dapat kompetitif memasuki dunia kerja sekaligus mempunyai jiwa entrepreneurship dalam upaya untuk meningkatkan kesejahteraan masyarakat.
Saya mengambil jurusan ini karena fasilitas di FISIP UHAMKA sangatlah menunjang kebutuhan mahasiswa. Masuk UHAMKA, kalian nggak akan nyesal.
Sekolah Pasca Sarjana UHAMKA. Sekolah Pasca Sarjana UHAMKA menjawab tantangan para mahasiswa dan pekerja yang ingin mengejar jenjang pendidikan yang lebih tinggi, juga untuk meningkatkan profesi dan kompetensi bekerja.
Saya memilih UHAMKA karena untuk menunjang pendidikan dan karir saya ke depan, dan karena terakreditasi A sehingga membuat saya yakin untuk memilih kampus ini.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Pusat Neuroscience UHAMKA adalah lembaga yang mengkhususkan diri untuk mengkaji bagaimana ilmu tentang otak dan perilaku manusia diaplikasikan di berbagai bidang, seperti leadership, marketing, edukasi, dan sebagainya. Pusat Neuroscience UHAMKA adalah satu dari sangat sedikit lembaga yang mengkaji bidang itu di Indonesia. Jika ada di antara rekan-rekan semuanya yang ingin mendalami tentang otak manusia, silakan bergabung ke UHAMKA.
UHAMKA, universitas yang membentuk generasi muda yang unggul dalam kecerdasan intelektual dan spiritual, menyongsong persaingan global terhadap tenaga profesional di
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bapak Ibu sekalian, untuk acara hari kedua, the first UHAMKA International Conference on Moderate Islam Discourses and Practices akan segera kita mulai. Mohon Bapak Ibu dapat menyesuaikan untuk mikrofon dalam posisi di mute, dan untuk video kami mohon berkenan untuk dapat dibuka dengan menggunakan virtual background yang telah disiapkan oleh panitia. Terima kasih. Baik, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Praise be to Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Peace be upon Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the last messenger of Allah who has guided human life and into the right way of Islam. Thank you for joining our second day on the first UHAMKA International Conference on Moderate Islam Discourses and Practices. And today for our second day, we will have three invited speakers. Ibu Rahmawati Hussein, MCP PhD from Muhammadiyah Disaster Management Center, or MDMC. And then Dr. Iza Rahman, MA, from Institute for Islamic and Muhammadiyah Research and Development, UHAMKA. The third speaker is Ibu Ai Fatimah Nur Fuad, PhD, from Faculty of Islamic Studies, UHAMKA. And this session will be moderated by Mr. Rizky Amrillah, MED. And before we start our agenda today, let's start our agenda by saying Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. And then the time is for Mr. Rizky Amrillah for being the moderator today. Mr. Rizky Amrillah, the time is yours. Mr. Rizky Amrillah, are you with us already?
I'm preparing myself.
Okay, thank you.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much, Ms. Farida Haryati, for the time. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. Muhammad ibn Abdullah. Arsalahu ilal khalqi bashira wa nadhira wa da'iyan ila Allahi bi'idhnihi wa sirajan munira. Dear brothers and sisters, all the lecturers and my beloved audiences, first and foremost, we thank to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who has given us the mercies, the blessings, the happiness, the healthy, until we meet together, we participate this great UHAMKA International Conference on Moderate Islam, or as said by Professor Dr. Din Samsudin yesterday, that we can call another term in moderation in Islam, such as Islamic middle faith, Wasatiyat al-Islam. My dear brothers and sisters, today we have three speakers. The first speaker will be delivered by Ms. Rahmawati Hussein, and second, Dr. Iza Rahman, and the third speaker is Ms. Ai Fatimah Nur Fuad. We move on to the first speaker, but before we begin our session today, let's start our conference today by reciting Al-Basmalah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We step on to the first speaker, Dr. Rahmawati Hussein. As I read his profile from I'm sorry. Okay. She did a bachelor degree from University Gadjah Mada, and then pursued and then got a master degree from University of Cincinnati, USA, and then PhD program from University of Texas. So our topic today is Moderate Islam and Humanitarianism, the experiences of Muhammadiyah. Okay, let me start our session, and this topic will be delivered for Rahmawati Hussein. The times is yours.
Thank you, Pak Rizky Amrillah. Good morning, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah, praise be upon Allah that we could meet today for the International Conference on Moderation of Islam. And I try to share screen now. Okay. Where is that? Let me share screen, and I'm going to talk about the moderate Islam in practice. So I'm picking up the topic on the experience of Muhammadiyah in handling the humanitarian response in the past decade. Yeah, I'm going to start what might be discussed yesterday about what is a moderate Islam. So I'm taking from various sources that the discourse on the moderate Islam been as a label used for counterterrorism discourse that might be been discussing yesterday, although this concept is more on the Western concept, and also the term also been widely discussed on Umatan Wasaton, which followed by or considered as a way of Muhammadiyah, one of the organization in Indonesia, as according to Hanafi, mean the middle, moderate, justice, and best. And I will use the term of Umatan Wasaton to discuss how the Muhammadiyah responding or providing humanitarian assistance so far. And why this become important, since I also want to talk about the basic conflict or characteristic of Wasatiyah. As I mentioned, I use this. So this considered embedded trait of non-violence and liberalism, believe in democratic, cellular, and pluralist method, and also open-minded. And I'm not going to discuss the controversy or the polemic on whether it is West or East in terms of the moderation in Islam, but as I will discuss is how actually Muhammadiyah values on the humanitarian as a way of being moderate. As we know that Muhammadiyah, one of the biggest organization in Indonesia, using the Surah Al-Ma'un as the main theological values that used for all the practicing or for all of the activities within Muhammadiyah. This value is how that we encourage the feed of the poor, the feeding the poor, helping the need, and also upholding humanity, as mentioned in Surah Al-Maidah. This is the basic concept on the humanity for all, and whoever save one, it is as if he had saved mankind entirely. So this basic concept, the importance of humanity within Muhammadiyah organization, has been as a pillar for all the humanitarian activities. And I also want to discuss why the faith-based organization such as Muhammadiyah is important, yeah, in humanitarian assistance. First, in the context of Indonesia, Indonesia is remained within the top 5 countries in the world that frequently hit annually by various disasters. And then FBO, faith-based organization, has a long history of responding to people in need, particularly people at the grassroots level, and they are among the first responder in disaster and work before, during, and after disaster. And as we know that local faith institution also have the advantage by having close proximity to and part of the population affected by crisis, either disaster or social, or even right now the non-natural disaster like pandemic that we are currently experiencing. And this FBO or faith-based organization have developed special relationship of trust as well as insight and access to community. And the personnel frequently volunteer from local faith institution often present before crisis and are first responder when disaster hits. So this is very important how the faith-based institution or local faith institution have been contribute to bring the value of Islam in helping others, in providing services to people in need, in supporting the protection to those who are in dealing with any other crisis, yeah, and many different crises. So it's very important. And this local faith institution, including Muhammadiyah, have material and social assets. Muhammadiyah has the mosque, or using the mosque is not only within Muslim society and also any other religious belief as well, that the charity platform has been frequently or has been naturally located in the center of the community to provide help. And for those who are not familiar with the Muhammadiyah, the organization, which was established in 1912, estimated had 35 million members and branches through all over Indonesia with so many institutions. And this institution has been working untiredly, yeah, to provide the need to all people regardless religion and so on, which is why Muhammadiyah considered as moderate because of not choosing, which I will explain later on. And for humanitarian assistance, in the past 10 years, Muhammadiyah has increasingly responded domestically and also internationally. Domestically, Muhammadiyah responses from 40 to hundreds annually, meaning that Muhammadiyah is not only working on Islamic teachings only, but working or moderate in practice by providing assistance through all people all over Indonesia and even overseas, yeah, like in Somali, Palestine, the Philippines, Nepal, Myanmar, and Bangladesh. So that's how the Muhammadiyah has been handling the response. And here you can see the map. So Muhammadiyah is not only working in one area, but working throughout Indonesia, from Aceh to Papua, yeah, from Java to Maluku, and also to Borneo. And in providing relief and response, the Muhammadiyah, through its unit called Muhammadiyah Disaster Management Center, providing the health services and education in disaster, psychosocial, water supply, sanitation, logistic, shelter, search and rescue, and livelihood. So this type of activity is not always related with Islam, but helping whoever, yeah, in the crisis and need for assistance. Yeah, so it's immediate assistance provided to people all over Indonesia that hit by natural or even social conflict. And not only in response, as we know, this is value of the moderation. The Muhammadiyah is also following the universalities by following the humanitarian principle, where humanity, the principle that driver for any response to crisis, that human suffering must be addressed first. Yeah? whether it is caused by conflict, violence, natural or non-natural disaster. And humanitarian action must be carried out on the basis of the need alone, giving priority to the most urgent cases of distress and making no distinction on the basis of nationality, race, gender, religious belief, class, and political opinion. And then also the third principle of humanitarian is neutrality, where the humanitarian actor must not take side in hostile or engage in controversy of political, racial, religious, or ideological nature. And the last principle, it should be independent, meaning that humanitarian action must be autonomous from the political, economic, military, and other objectives. Reflecting this, that Muhammadiyah been following the path on the moderation and practice since when MDMC or Muhammadiyah responses various crises within this country or even overseas, this principle been upheld, the principle of not taking side or distinction based on religious, race and gender, which is also the characteristic of wasatania or the characteristic of moderation. It's been practicing by Muhammadiyah in all various humanitarian assistance. And this is also the value that I quote. I haven't translated in English. I quoted from what Kiai Ahmad Dahlan also his message on how the Muhammadiyah in moderation, when it helped the people in need, it is suggested when you are helping people in need, don't use your Islamic value to all people, to divide the country on nationality. So we hold the help, the value, this the principle, is helping regardless religious. So this also been messaged by the founder of Muhammadiyah for a long time, become the principle in dealing or in responding any crisis. So we see here that the moderation become a practice for a long time by Muhammadiyah, as this become the value, the principles, the norm that been upheld. And not only during response, but Muhammadiyah through Muhammadiyah Disaster Management Center has also been working to in preparedness and mitigation, and disaster risk reduction, and not only working with Islamic institution, but Muhammadiyah been working with various organizations, including non-Islamic organization through interfaith, like working on preparing to excel emergency response with the Catholic Relief Service, and also working with Australia on Safe Hospital Program and Safe School Program, working with various actors as well. And also Muhammadiyah already published the Theology of Disaster, interpreting Islamic value on disaster or coping disaster in Islamic perspective. And for COVID-19, this Muhammadiyah has also been working, regardless places, and also again with religious thing, from Aceh to Papua. This is the COVID response, and in COVID response, Muhammadiyah have working for prevention and health promotion, health services, logistic distribution such as food, and then PPE or the personal protection equipment, and then data plan and social economic support, such as food security and small scale businesses support, handling the bodies of victims, and also sheltering infected persons. So providing quarantine facilities. What I want to show that this networking of Muhammadiyah and working with various organizations also showing the moderation of Islam, or how Muhammadiyah become a moderate institution by not closing the partnership and collaboration with only Islamic organization. Muhammadiyah been working with the various actors in disaster and humanitarian sector, like with the government, with humanitarian forum, where Muhammadiyah working with the interfaith organization, such as the Catholic, Christian, Buddhist organization, which is working on humanitarian assistance, and then working through different clusters. And the most important as well, when dealing at international level, Muhammadiyah become an open organization, which means Muhammadiyah or MDMC is not closing to work with one actor or one aspect. Yeah, and I'll give the example how the working of the moderation of Muhammadiyah in terms of the interfaith response. Yeah, so this is as reflection how the Muhammadiyah not only helping the Muslim and not having or against other religious organization. So the one of the example is building trust and promoting value, norm, and humanitarian principle. In the case of tsunami West Sumatra, the issue on the evangelical or proselytism, yeah, that's been always, yeah, in many humanitarian setting. So we try not to promote the issue on evangelicals. So how to promote more on tolerance and working together partnership for disaster response, like in Wasior, in Papua, yeah, MDMC working with the Catholic organizations such as Karina, Caritas, yeah, and also working, providing, yeah, support to the affected communities because of social and religious conflict, such as in Lampung, the Balinuraga cases, and Sidoarjo, the CE or Sia, and Papua between Christian and Muslim. And during the COVID, even the team of MDMC treating and burying the dead body of non-Muslim patients. So this is very important to show how the Muhammadiyah is not selecting or only choosing the Muslim community, but to work for all, yeah, to provide. And in conclusion, since it's approaching the time, as a moderate Islam, Muhammadiyah, through its humanitarian activities, has been helping others whoever in need, regardless religion, race, group. Yeah, it's very important to uphold the principle this. If we reflect to the definition or the characteristic of what Sun, yeah, the middle, the center, yeah, and then Muhammadiyah working with various actors, domestic and overseas, regardless religious and politics, by promoting tolerance, inclusive, open-minded, and wasaton values. Yeah, this is very important. Being in the middle, on the center, if you are working in humanitarian, because you cannot only help the Muslim community, but you help all the people in need. And the last is promoting justice. So by working on humanitarian setting, the Muhammadiyah has tried to protect to provide protection for all people in need, because during the crisis, protection is very important. Protection on the basic need, the protection on the basic human right for having food, shelters, and clothing is very important. This activities has reflected the characteristic of wasatan, like I mentioned in the very beginning. Here, that the characteristic is more on the spirit of tolerance, open-minded, and non-violence by providing the humanitarian assistance. Muhammadiyah choose the wasatan way, the middle way, the center way, the progressive way in helping others. I will stop from here, and I'm returning to the moderator, and I hope this small contribution could provide the picture on how the moderation in practice. Thank you, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Dr. Rahmawati, for the excellent presentation, very useful, and also confirming to us that Muhammadiyah has proven that having various institutions, Muhammadiyah contribute to the country, and this is part of the implementation of modern Islam. As I show in the last presentation, in conclusions, I see modern Islam Muhammadiyah through its humanitarian activities has been helping others, working with various actors, promoting justice, and so on. Well, my beloved audiences, we will open question and answers session after 3 speakers delivers their presentation. So now we move on to next speaker. The next speaker will be delivered by Dr. Izzar Rahman with the title Retrieving Moderation's Hermeneutics, UHAMKA Approach. We have 30 time maximum. Dr. Izzar, please, time is yours.
Well, thank you, Ustaz Rizky Amrillah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Wa bihi nasta'inu ala umuri dunyatin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin. Wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'du. First of all, let me thank the organizer for this important opportunity to speak at this important UHAMKA International Conference on a timely topic on modern Islam. My presentation is entitled Retrieving Moderation Through Hermeneutics, UHAMKA's Approach to Sunni-Shi'i Relations. So basically, I limit my presentation to moderation within Muslims or within Islam, within in particular in Sunni, related to Sunni and Shi'i relations, and I will focus on how UHAMKA deals with Shia or Sunni and Shia. I use the word retrieving moderations because actually we have understood that moderation was there since Islam was started to be taught by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So basically, Islam teaches moderation, but sometimes this moderation has been hampered by Muslim actions themselves. So I use the term retrieving moderation to also to put an emphasis on that moderation is basically justified by Islam, strongly justified by the Quran and the Sunnah. So we have many times heard and listened that moderation has been often justified by certain understanding of the Quran. I think from yesterday, we have heard such words or idioms like ummatan wasatan, derived from the Quran. So moderation has been often justified with our understanding, our certain understanding of the Quran, to claim that moderation is actually Quranic, has a strong foundation in the Quran. But on the other hand, Quran interpretation is actually an arena of contestation for different religious groups within Islam, for different religious schools within Islam, for different religious thoughts within Islam. So throughout history, we see that Quran interpretation, we call it tafsir. Tafsir has been a space for all groups within Islam to get legitimacy from the Quran. And the contestation can be still there, even when a commitment toward openness to the text is claimed. Even when objectivist or objective approach to the Quran is claimed, we can still see that the Quran interpretation has been used like an arena of contestation, for the diverse group within Islam. A commitment toward an objective approach to the Quran, I have been argued, and some previous studies have argued, can be interrupted by sectarian tendencies. So even we approach the Quran with our commitment, with one's commitment to be objective, but the result can still demonstrate the interruption of our own bias, our sectarian tendencies in interpreting the Quran. And among others, Sunnism and Shiism have an impact on the way the Quran has been interpreted, even when interpreted along a commitment to allow the Quran to speak. Some exegetes, some Muslim scholars, they try to use what's so-called tafsirul Quran bil Quran, that principally is based on the premise of the interconnectedness of the Quranic parts, and how we can allow the Quran to speak when the Quran is interpreted with such tafsirul Quran bil Quran. Sunnism, even Sunnism and Shiism can still interrupt our commitment to let the Quran to speak. So when allowing the Quran to speak, we sometimes interrupt the Quran with our own thought, with our own theological background, with our own tendency, or with our own bias. So this is what I am trying to say. The question is then, if our openness to the text, our objective approach to the text cannot help us to reach a moderate position, or to omit our bias, or to be or to get moderation in our relationship within Islam. The question then, can openness to the others help in this regard? Openness to the others, meaning to other religious groups within Islam, can help us to have a moderate views on words in the Quran, or on verses of the Quran, so we can have better relations, not to assert our concern for our own theology or our own ideology, but to instill the ideology of the moderation within Quran interpretations. And I will show Hamka and his Tafsir al-Azhar as an example. Perhaps it's not the best example, but I will illustrate Hamka's Tafsir al-Azhar as an example of how we can have moderate views on Muslim diversity, on Muslim dispute, theological and political dispute, using certain approach to Quran interpretation. So of course, perhaps we will not approach the Quran in a constant mode or in a constant method, but at least we can demonstrate our openness to the others in the Quran interpretations, so we can live in harmonious coexistence. This is what I am trying to argue. Why Hamka? Yesterday Professor Junaid talked about Hamka, why Hamka is important in the context of talking about Islamic moderation, but he of course talk about Islamic moderation in a broader context. Today I will talk about Hamka in a narrower context, especially in about Sunni and Shia. First, Hamka was labeled as a free thinker by Buya Ahmad Shafi'i Ma'arif. And I think many of us agree with him. Hamka is also a master writer. James Ross labeled him so. And Professor Junaid labels him as a cosmopolitan reformer. So with this reputation, then we can, of course, hope that Hamka will provide us an example of how to be moderate in relation to Muslim diversity in interpreting the Quran. The second reason is that HAMKA, I would argue, was quite familiar with Shia. Yeah, with Shia. We can see, for instance, in his di tepi Sungai Dajlah, yeah, which is an account of his journey to the Middle East, yeah, di tepi Sungai Dajlah, yeah. HAMKA talks about Shia. Yeah. The book was published as early as 1952. Yeah. 1952, so far before HAMKA wrote Tafsir al-Ashar. HAMKA was already familiar with Shia, and I think with Shiism. Yeah. In pelajaran agama Islam, yeah, there are some narratives on Shia, on Shia. I think parts or elements in Shia, yeah, in the book, yeah. So it is okay, yeah. Okay, it is an evidence. Yeah. It is an evidence that HAMKA was familiar with Shia, and of course, as an historian, HAMKA, yeah, wrote some books on Muslim history, most notably Sejarah Umat Islam. I think HAMKA clearly incorporates Shia history within Muslim history, within Islamic history. So we can be very sure that HAMKA was familiar with Shia. HAMKA was familiar with Shia, and even perhaps we can also argue that it was HAMKA, yeah, who wrote, among other topics, yeah, among wide-ranging topics he wrote, yeah. It was HAMKA who talked about Shia more than other great Muslim scholars in Indonesia of his time and before. So I think HAMKA, perhaps it was HAMKA, a Muhammadiyah scholar or Muslim scholar, who talked about Shia quite a lot, because HAMKA was, of course, was prolific and wrote many books. So of course, some topics of his writings deal with Shia. So HAMKA wrote or discussed Shia, I think, more than other religious scholars or Islamic scholars in Indonesia. So I think HAMKA made a precedence of talking about Shia with an open-mindedness, Of course, but before a scholar like Hasim Ash'ari wrote about Shia, but to assert the heterodoxy of the group, yeah, HAMKA was different, yeah. HAMKA talk about Shia with an open-mindedness, I think. And my third reason to choose his Tafsir al-Azhar is that his tafsir relies on tafsirs of various schools. HAMKA refers to Az-Zamakhshari, which was a Mu'tazilite, yeah. HAMKA refers to Ar-Razi, HAMKA refers to At-Tabari and Ibn Kathir, who use very much Tafsir bil-Maqsur, yeah. Al-Azhar, okay, HAMKA use also modern tafsirs such as Tafsir al-Manar by Abduh and Rashid Ridha. But HAMKA also includes some Shi'i tafsirs, most notably At-Taba'is al-Mizan. So 30 years before Quraisy Shihab use At-Tabatabai as a useful reference in his tafsir. Hamka has already cited many times At-Tabatabai is Al-Mizan. Of course, not in all in all verses or about all verses. Hamka use At-Tabatabai, but it is very clear that At-Tabatabai and two other CE exegetes have been included by Hamka in his Tafsir al-Azhar. So we have very good reasons to choose Hamka and his Tafsir al-Azhar to talk about moderation within Islam, within the groups in Islam. My study is in particular talking about how modern approach to Sunni Shi'i dispute have been introduced by Hamka in his Tafsir al-Azhar, and secondly, what kind interpretive strategies that Hamka has incorporated in his tafsir to come up with the modern views. Okay. Basically, I refer to all volumes of Tafsir al-Azhar. Okay, of course, Tafsir al-Azhar consists of 9 volumes, or even actually it was 30 volumes. I use all volumes, but with, of course, with a technique to get some narratives on Shia with searching some keywords. Okay. My study finds that Hamka discusses Shia with respect, at least with respect, if we cannot say a full respect, with respect, more as a part of Muslim history, as the let's say the political other, rather than as a deviant sect, as the religious other. And Hamka sometimes, of course, can be very critical of some Shia associated religious practices, and sometimes, but Hamka sometimes can appreciate Shi'i religious practices, such as when he interprets Ali Imran 28 on Taqiyya, for instance. Hamka says that talk about Taqiyya in a positive tone, and Hamka hardly gives normative judgment of Shi'i most central doctrine. More importantly, of Imamah, most central doctrine of Imamah. So, of course, these conference participants can help me if you have found that Hamka talk about Imamah, Imamah as a doctrine, and he gives a negative comment or criticize the doctrine. Please help me. Of course, Hamka wrote a lot of books, and I focus only on Tafsir al-Azhar, and I focus on Tafsir al-Azhar with scan reading, with a quick reading, of course. Hamka incorporates use of some Shi'i intellectual works, of course, tafsirs and some others. Hamka refers to Shi'i figures and even cites them as a good example. When he interprets Ali Imran 134, الذين ينفقون في السراء والضراء والكاظمين الغيظ والعافين عن الناس, Hamka, Hamka cites Musa al-Kadhim as the only, the only scholar he mentions in his interpretation of the verse, as a good example of how an ulama, or a scholar who has taqwa, taqwa personality, gives an example of being among those yunfikuna fi sarra wal dharra wal kadhimin al ghaid wal afina 'anil nas wallahu yuhibbul muhsinin. So Hamka cites this great imam for Shi'i community with respect. So it is an example of how Hamka is quite open-minded to CE figures as well. Hamka cites Ja'far as-Sadiq, and other imams as well, in his Tafsir al-Asara. Hamka comments on verses often disputed by Sunni CE scholars, most of the time without defending Sunnism or arguing against Shiism. Of course, this is my argument. You can have a different argument, but my argument so far is that Hamka seems to avoid both defending Sunnism or arguing against Shiism while interpreting verses that have been often disputed by Sunni and Shi'i scholars, verses on Ahlul Bayt, verses on Imamah, of course, there are perhaps some exceptions, for instance, when Hamka talk about Mun'ah, of course, Hamka is very critical of Mun'ah, but Hamka argue against Shiism is perhaps not arguing against Shiism as a whole, but Hamka is critical toward the practice of Mut'ah, a contemporary marriage, often associated with Shia. But on the verses related to Imamah, on Sahaba, we cannot find clearly that Hamka is truly defending Sunnism, against Shiism. So Hamka seems to avoid. Well, if we come back to the study of the Quran or the Quranic exegesis, in general, we can find that interpreters of the Quran actually treat differences differently. They handle Muslim diversity or Muslim diverse thoughts differently. Of course, students of tafsirs can understand this, can see this very clearly. If we cite some examples from modern exegetes, we can find that some scholars like Ibn Ashur as well as Ashankiti, they try to defend Sunnism while interpreting Quranic verses on Ahlul Bayt, on Imamah, on some doctrines where Sunni and Shia are disputing or have been disputing throughout history. This is the way Ibn Ashur and Ashankiti interprets the verses. Verses I take a closer look in my study, while At-Tabatabai is Al-Mizan, he defends very much Shiism. Yeah, even though he has stated his commitment, yeah, to be objective, yeah, to use tafsir al-Quran, but when interprets these verses crucial or fundamental to Shia, Tobai always defends Shia in very long narrative. Yeah. On the other hand, Quraish Shihab, yeah, Indonesian contemporary Mufassir, gives space to both Sunnism and Shiism, yeah, more very often. Yeah. So both Sunni view and Shi'i view, Quraish Shihab will provide. Yeah. Of course, there are some exceptions as well, yeah. Like when Shihab talks about Mu'ah as well. Yeah, Shihab criticized, but still, yeah, he gives space to Shiism. Hamka is different. Yeah. Hamka avoids Sunni Shi'i dispute, yeah, around the meaning of verses that have been most often contested by Sunni and Shia, while being open to CE resource, to CE scholars, or even to CE history, while interpreting other verses. So we have to differentiate between Quranic verses that have been most often disputed by Sunni and Shia, and those Quranic verses where we can see many commonalities here. We have many in common here between Sunnah and Shia. So my previous study list, it is only around 100 verses in the Quran, yeah, among 6,236 verses. It was only 100 verses of the Quran where Sunnah and Shia are strongly disputed. Yeah. So I come up with a conclusion that an inclusive approach to Muslim diversity can lead an interpreter of the Quran. In this case, we can see from Hamka's tafsir, yeah, as an example, to avoid making arguments against or for critical arguments against or arguments for critical points of dispute, in spite of their openness toward others. Yeah, Hamka is very open to CE literature, CE works, and CE scholars. But when speaking about or when interpreting about the verses fundamental to those figures, to those scholars, yeah, Hamka does not want to defend Sunnism or to argue against Shiism. So that's my my conclusion so far. I really hope that this can be a contribution to our talk about moderation, especially moderation within Muslims. Yeah, within Muslims, that I think Islamic moderation or moderate Islam requires us to be also tolerant, to be open-minded, not only toward non-Muslims, but Muslims, our brothers themselves. So that's my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. I give the opportunity or the time to Ustaz Rizky Rillah. Thank you.
Still mute, Pak Rizky.
The audio is still off.
Listen my voice?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Izzal Rahman. In slide 10, it is said that UHAMKA is free thinker, master writer, and cosmopolitan reformer. I think we all agree with that. And also, thank you very much, Dr. Izzal Rahman. Dr. Izzal Rahman, for the amazing presentations. The knowledge and insight presented to us is really useful and valuable. Well, my beloved audiences, before we move on to the third speaker, at the beginning, I missed to read the curriculum vitae, Dr. Izzal Rahman. I'm sorry, Dr. Izzal. He is a senior lecturer at UHAMKA Institute for Islamic Muhammadiyah and Muhammadiyah Research and Development. And also he is a deputy dean for the Faculty of Education and Teacher Training. And his background study, he completed bachelor degree to doctorate program at the State Islamic University of Jakarta Sharif Hidayatullah. Okay, my dear brothers and sisters, for the next third speaker will be presents with the title Wasatiyah Islam, Perspective and Experiences in Indonesian Context. Will be presented by Dr. Aifati Manur Fuad. She is a Deputy Dean at the Faculty of Islamic Studies, and her background of study, bachelor degree at Al-Azhar University, master degree at University of Indonesia, and double master degree at Leeds University, and then PhD program from Leeds University. Okay, without further ado, the time is yours.
Thank you, Pak Rizky. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahi haqqa hamdi wassalatu wassalamu ala rasuli wa ala alihi wa ashabihi amma ba'd. Thank you very much. I am happy and grateful to be here with two respected speakers, my seniors, Bu Ama and Pak Izzal Rahman, and all distinguished guests and senior lecturer in both UHAMKA and other institutions. I saw from Banjarmasin, Lampung, Surakarta, Surabaya, and many more. So welcome to our conference. So especially here we have our senior, Prof. Yunan Yusuf, from FAI, Faculty of Islamic Studies UHAMKA, and I saw also Bu Yanti Amran from Coventry University Indonesia office. Welcome, Bu Yanti. And also my Ustad, my lecturers from Ciamis Boarding School, Pak Tatang Ibrahim, Ustad Tatang, and all the audiences from all over Indonesia who are coming with us and also joining this conference. So good morning, and I hope that we can enjoy and benefit from this conference. Okay, I'm going to talk about Wasatiyah-based Islam. So I would like to share my screen. Yeah, perspective and experience in Indonesian context, particularly in Muhammadiyah context, because yesterday I heard from Bu Ruhaini, from other speakers, yeah, Mike Hardy, also from Pak Din and Pak Khairuddin Al-Junaid. We saw a big spectrum of moderation in different aspects of our lives. So I try to focus on Indonesian context, especially in religious life with the case of Muhammadiyah. Here is my outline. So there are three key things that I would like to share to you all. The first about humanity issue in both global and local context. And then the concept of wasatiyah in Islam, and the last, perspective and experiences in Indonesia and with particular case Muhammadiyah. Okay, I think today we are facing issues on humanity in both local and global context, such as extreme spiritualism. We see individual or movement who only concern or focus on their spiritual journey and then ignoring other aspect of life. And then we also saw extreme materialism that that are individual or movement who are concerned only on material purposes for their wealth or their individual prosperity without caring other people. And also other issues of gender inequality and job discrimination, women rights, and also their discrimination. There is also violence against women, including women trafficking, sexual and domestic violence, and modern slavery. Other issues also we found in our local and global context, such as terrorism and radicalism, racism, war and conflict, child issues, and then health issues, including maternal death of mother, yeah, during their delivery process of child, and also pandemic issues, and also other issues such as climate change and environmental issues. And here we can see there are also issues on humanity and focus or related especially to women issues. Here it is mentioned from the data that over 2.7 billion women are legally restricted from having the same choice of job as men. So there is this discrimination of job in public sphere in both Indonesia and other country. 99% of all maternal death, it still happen in developing countries. And also domestic violence isn't considered a crime in many countries. And 1 in 3 women or girls are impacted by physical or sexual violence in their lifetime. So here is our current challenges. There are extremism in any forms of extremism, from religious to other practice of extremism. There is also inequality, imbalance, injustice, and so on and so forth. Extremism, it's not only actually happen right now in our contemporary time, but reflecting to the Islamic history, we have also 3 group of extremists. I mean 3 type of extremist activities. The first, ideological extremism or at-tatarruf al-i'tiqadi. In the literature, it's mentioned that the emergence of theological groups in early Islam, such as Qadariyah, Jahmiyah, Murji'ah, and Syiah Ismailiyah or Batiniyah, it's mark the emergence or the existing of ideological extremism in early Islam, especially in the 1st and 2nd century of Islam. And the second, political extremism or at-tatarruf as-siyasi. It is marked by the confrontation to the authority of lawful government. For example, in the early Islam, we have Khawarij, who banned the leadership of Ali bin Abi Thalib, and to a certain extent, they also have an opinion to allow kill the people outside the Khawarij followers. And the third is practical extremism or at-tatarruf al-amali. It consists of extremist conduct such as excessive fasting, so all night fasting, all day fasting without breaking the fast, excessive diet, to keep slim. Excessive disciplining child, for instance, it's also a kind of practical extremism. So it's exists in the past, in our early history of Islam. So we can also show other practice of ideological extremism, political extremism, practical extremism in more contemporary touch and forms right now. Okay, so what is extremism actually? Extremism is the opposite concept of wasatiyah. So extremism in Islamic literature, it is mentioned as atatarruf or atashaddud or al-ghulu, like Pak Khairuddin Al-Junaid yesterday mentioned, cited from UHAMKA, ya, our ulama, al-ghulu. But in many more literature, it's mentioned atatarruf also and atashaddud. So it is mean the inclination toward the prejudice or extreme opinion, extreme attitude. It means there is an excess in their both ideas, both action or movement in general. So how about wasatiyah? Wasatiyah in Islamic literature, it is at-tawassut or al-mizan, at-tawazun, al-adalah, or al-i'tidal, at-taysir, as-samahah, at-tasamu, wa raf'ul haraj. All this term is the same meaning and scope with al-wasatiyah. And wasatiyah is closely aligned with justice, and it's mean opting for a middle position. Pak Din yesterday said instead of moderation, he prepared to say middle path. So middle path is taken from this mean, a middle position. Okay, so adding to what Bu Ama said earlier in the first few slides, in the first 2 slides, I think. Wasatiyah in Islam is an inherent concept in Islam. It is strongly rooted in Islamic tradition, in Islamic theological fundamental basis of Islam. It is mentioned in Al-Quran, it is mentioned in Hadith, it is also often mentioned in many Sahabah speaking statement. And also it's strengthening by our contemporary ulama such as Muhammad Abduh, Yusuf Qardawi, Thohir Ibnu Ashur, and also Al-Zuhaili. In Al-Quran, it is said that Al-Baqarah 143, wait. Ya, wa kadzalika ja'alnakum ummatan wasata. So wasata, it's mean ummatan wasata means ummat that balance between the worldly and hereafter life or situation. And in Al-Qalam 28, it is mentioned qala awsatuhum alam aqul lakum laula tusabbihun. So when it say awsatuhum, it mean the wiser among them. So the wiser person among them. It is also mentioned in Al-Baqarah 238, Hafidhu ala salawat wa salatul wusta. So al-wusta, it's mean also the best prayer. Yeah, the best prayer. It is in the tafsir say salat asar, but it is still also many interpretation coming up with this Al-Baqarah 238, but we can highlight that the concern is on the importance of balancing our life and also on choosing the best in our life through the moderation ways. And Hadis Ibnu Abbas, khairul umur awsatuha. We all know about this hadith, and also I found the speaking from Ali bin Abi Thalib and also Jabir bin Samurah. Ali bin Abi Thalib say, "Alaikum bin namtil ausat." So al-ausat here mean wasatiyah. And Jabir ibnu bin Samurah also say, "Kanat solatur Rasul." I mean, kanat solatur Rasul qasdan wa khutbatuhu qasdan. So qasdan mean here is wasatiyah. And Muhammad Abduh, Yusuf Al-Qardawi, Ibnu Ashur, and Al-Juhaili strengthen the idea that wasatiyah is inherently rooted in Islamic tradition. And they also explain that the meaning of dinul fitrah is din of moderation, dinul wasatiyah. So dinul fitrah is dinul wasatiyah according to the ulama. So from this tradition or this basis, we know that Islam really strongly support wasatiyah or moderate in both ideology or ideas, action and movement. And on the contrary, Islam rejects any form of extremism. Okay, so how about Muhammadiyah? This is the last outline. Muhammadiyah follow middle path, as Pak Din mentioned yesterday. Muhammadiyah and including Aisyah are an alternative movement that offer moderate approach among other existing religious or mass movement in Indonesia. As we all know that here in Indonesia, we have many organizations, many movement, many dakwah institution, and these organizations have different orientation, different vision, and also different trajectories. From this, the whole movement and organization, so Muhammadiyah choose to be a moderate organization. Through their da'wah, Muhammadiyah and Aisyah try to respond to the dynamics of both local and global humanity issue. It's mean follow the new, the current, including the newest dynamics in our current life, including how MDMC under Bu Ama leadership is very responsive in terms of the issue of disaster and other issues of natural disasters. And here, the experience of Muhammadiyah. Actually, Muhammadiyah already very seriously discussed about religious extremism in 47th Muktamar of Muhammadiyah in Makassar, because we saw that there are few groups here in Indonesia and also other countries who are always or often judging other people as doing wrong or labeling them as sesat, liberal, or kafir, non-believers. So this tendency is indeed contrast with the spirits of Islam to humanize, respect, tolerance, and to share kindness with other people. So this is a concern of Muhammadiyah, how to deal with this religious life. The tendency of extreme religious ideas and actions, such as this practice of takfiri, is absolutely un-Islamic and not part of the Islamic teaching. And as I mentioned earlier about the many religious or dakwah movement or Islamic organization in Indonesia, we know that there are a variety of Islamic organization in terms of their activities in both social or education or dakwah activities. So there are sometimes some organization or few organization that tend to be extreme only on jihad issues, so they are called as jihadis, and some very concerned on political purposes. So in the literature it say as political, and also few of the organization very concerned only and purification. So they said and called as purists. Other typology also mentioned by scholars, not only Quinton Victorowicz who defined three typology, political, purist, and jihadis, but also other scholars such as Fajlur Rahman and Andrew Rivin, Charles Kurzman, and other also having typology such as secular, liberal, fundamentalist, traditionalist, and modernist. Now we saw that there are few also organizations who tend to very secular, very liberal, so extreme in liberal, extreme in secular, extreme in fundamental. So this is our phenomenon of religious life, focusing on religious organizations. So Muhammadiyah trying to be between this extreme one and other extreme, so in the middle. And for Muhammadiyah and Aisyah, Da'wah is not only about strengthening the faith and individual religiosity or personal piety, but also active engagement to contribute solving various humanity issues. So Muhammadiyah having, for instance, hospital to provide solution for our pandemic problem. And also Muhammadiyah established a COVID center to engage with the big problem of during our pandemic era in Indonesia. And it is a very clear solution or trying to contribute to our society. And Da'wah Muhammadiyah and Aisyah also have a long track record of experiences and strong internal capacity to reform the society under the framework of Wasatiyah values. We know that Wasatiyah values, for instance, is considering mafsadah and madarat, and considering maqasidus syariah, hifdul mal, hifdul nasal, hifdul akal, hifdul din, maqasidus syariah, and other consideration also taken by Muhammadiyah when trying to reform the society under the framework of Wasatiyah values, including the approach of gradual reform, especially in terms of, for instance, legislation and so on. And Da'wah Muhammadiyah, including Aisyah, also focus to improve understanding and practices on gender equality, social justice, human and woman rights, and other concept of kalimatun sawa or common good, and also khairu ummah, best community. So for this concept of kalimatun sawa and khairu ummah, for instance, we trying to see the universal maslahat, the advantage and benefit for the whole humankind, regardless their religion, ethnicity, and other identities. It is also strengthening what Bu Ama said in terms of giving assistance to other people in needs during the natural disaster. So MDMC never see what is the background of their religion, what their background of ethnicity and other racial identities. So it's for all human kind. And Dakwah Muhammadiyah in Asia concern on shaping public awareness on the importance of tolerant, open, respect to diversity and multiculturalism, as well as at the same time shaping public awareness on the dangers of having extreme, radical, and fanatical ideas and action. This is the last slide, and to end up, I think Muhammadiyah trying to maximize the rule of wasatiyah Islam or wasatiyah berkemajuan, progressive wasatiyah through the policies, the policies, kebijakan, and also through the elite leadership that are really focusing on how to implement wasatiyah values and in many aspects of our lives. But we can see that in individual behavior or attitude of the followers or community of Muhammadiyah in general, we also saw the polarization in terms of respond and practice to the implementing wasatiyah values in their own different context. So it's not always similar and in accordance with the guidance from the elites of Muhammadiyah. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Dr. Fatimah Nur Fuad. We agree that Dakwah Muhammadiyah is not only about the strengthening the faith and individual religiosity, also an active engagement to contribute and give this to solving various humanity issues. Dear brothers and sisters, we had heard presentation from three speakers. First, from Dr. Rahmawati Hussein on title Moderate Islam and Humanitarianism, the experiences of Muhammadiyah. One of the points conveyed to us is that the evidence of Islamic moderation carried out by Muhammadiyah have various institutions, 176 universities, 19,951 schools, 457 hospitals, and so on. So, second speaker, Dr. Izzur Rahman, the title Retrieving Moderation Through Hermeneutics, UHAMKA Approach. While the third speaker, we just heard just now from Dr. Fatimah Nur Fuad on title Wasatiyah Based Islam, Perspective and Experiences in Indonesian Context. Dear brothers and sisters, we often sessions for question and answers, and we invite all the participants to ask the question to the speaker. We have plenty time until 12 AM. So we often for the first session for 3 questions. Please welcome. Okay. First, Prof. Yunan Yusuf. Please welcome Yunan Yusuf.
Okay. Thank you. My question addressed to Pak Izzur Rahman. You heard my voice?
Yes, very clear.
Okay. Pak Izzur.
Yes,
Halo Pak Izzur.
Yes, Prof. Yunan.
Okay. I'm very interested in hearing your conclusion that UICOMS comes up to moderate views when we place on two views, Sunni and Shiite. So this view is different from the conclusion I have written that UICOMS interpretation tends to be Mu'tazilite rather than Sunni. This conclusion is be placed in the science of kalam, ilmu kalam. Mu'tazilite is widely referred to by Shiites, while Ash'ari is widely referred to by Sunni. Okay, so in my opinion, UICOMS actually tends to Shiite rather than Sunni. What is your opinion about this conclusion? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Yunan Yusuf. For the next questions, please welcome the participant. You may address your questions to Dr. Rahmawati Hussein or Dr. Aifati Manut Fuad. Any questions? Okay. If there are not questions, we welcome to Dr. Izzal Rahman to respond the questions from Prof. Yunan Yusuf.
Well, okay, thank you, Prof. Yunan Yusuf, for the important and interesting question on UICOMS theological views, in particular in his interpretation in his Quranic commentary Tafsir al-Ashar. Okay, Prof. Yunan concludes that UICOMS is closer to Mu'tazilite theological views rather than Ash'ari theological views. And if we see the broader context, then we can see that Mu'tazilite views are closer or have been referred to, have been cited by Shiite, by Shiite Mu'tazilite. I think, okay, and Ash'ari, of course, part of larger Sunni context, Sunni theological context. I think perhaps we can come up with different conclusions with different cases. Prof. Yunan take forces or concepts on closely associated with kalam, of course, related to the attributes of God, to God in general. While I'm approaching the topic with taking cases of Quranic verses that have been often debated between Sunni scholars and Shiite scholars. So I do not focus on verses related to theology or to kalam. I focus on the verses where Sunnis and Shiite scholars most of the time are debating to defend or to offend, to argue for their theological view or to argue against other theological views. Yeah, and okay, Pak Yunan's conclusion is even Pak Yunan's conclusion even helps me to be very confident to say that HAMKA has a moderate approach to Sunni and Shia issues, to Ahlus Sunnah and Shia relations, both theological and political relations. So, of course, thank you, Prof. Yunan. Of course, if we derive a further conclusion from your studies conclusion that HAMKA tends to be rational than conservative, tends to be more Mu'tazilite rather than Ash'arites. Of course, my note is that Ahlus Sunnah, actually, the term Sunni or Ahlus Sunnah, of course, within the term actually covers a broader spectrum, a very broad spectrum, from Ash'ari. Sometimes some scholars argue that Mu'tazilite was actually part of Ahlus Sunnah, even though some Sunnis will argue differently that Mu'tazilite is not part of Ahlus Sunnah. But some scholars or some writers, some researchers, even state that Mu'tazilite is actually part of the larger or broader spectrum of Al-Sunnah themselves. Of course, if we define Shia as those who promote imamah and who disapprove with the legitimacy of the caliphate of Abu Bakar, Umar, and Uthman, then Mu'tazilah scholars, I think, they are generally still Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So my point is that rational views are there within Ahlus Sunnah as well. Of course, Ahlus Sunnah cannot be limited only to Ash'ari, of course. Some even more conservative, of course, like Salafis and others. But rationalism is also there, I think, in Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So HAMKA comes up with a moderate approach. I need to be very careful, claiming moderate approach of HAMKA, and I don't think that I have claimed that HAMKA have moderate views in terms of Ahlus Sunnah and Shia theological debate. But I come up with conclusion that HAMKA has a moderate approach, meaning that HAMKA tries to accommodate, or I think the word is not accurate. Try to give respect, to treat or to discuss Shia with respect, and not to if we call it sedikit-sedikit menyesatkan, mengkafirkan dan seterusnya. Not try to to state that Shia is deviant, Shia is like this, is heterodox, and so forth and so on, and so on and so forth. Yeah, but Hamka tries to to honor or to give respect to the existence of Shia as part of Muslim diversity. I think that is my note or my point to Pak Yunan's questions. Of course, I still need further study to connect my study with other research studies, like what has been done by Prof. Yunan himself, to check whether in certain kalam related verses or certain fikih related verses, of course, Hamka tries to use a moderate approach, to go beyond what he calls fanatism mazhab, fanaticism, to a certain school or to certain thoughts, to certain understanding of Islam or of the Quran. I think I hope my answer quite related to your question, Prof. Yunan. If not, please clarify.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, Prof.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Izzur Rahman, for the response, for the answers. Dear my brothers and sisters, all the participants, I believe that the titles today presentation is very interesting. I believe there are many phenomena that we face every day. So I think this is accordance with the titles in this conference. Once we invite participants to ask the questions. You may ask the question in Bahasa. Very welcome with pleasure.
I am Mr. Rizky if there is no question.
Okay. Please welcome Dr. Jaja Rahmah, Daja Nur Jannah.
Thank you for the chance to give to me. I have several questions for the presenter. For the first time, my question to Mrs. Rahmawati, as part of Muhammadiyah, as member of Muhammadiyah, I am so proud about activity of Muhammadiyah to helping the other, regardless of background associated, But in my mind, I want to ask how the spirit of Muhammadiyah in helping other, regardless of background, is associated with Islamic moderation. Because in my view, that helping people, I think, is a humanitarian issue. What if the extreme groups in religion then have no concern for the others? It is the question for Mrs. Rahmiwati. And then for Mr. Ija Rahman, if we see the group of WhatsApp in Muhammadiyah group, maybe we still see the member of group WhatsApp blame of Shia. It is not same as UHAMKA. UHAMKA is familiar with Shia. Why this phenomena can we find in Muhammadiyah, especially in grassroots Muhammadiyah. And maybe why Buya Hamka is so familiar with Shia, because if we look in history, Shia is one of school of Islam concerned with science, philosophy. When Sunni decline of intellectual spiritism, especially for philosophy, yeah. Because in the Sunni, for example, there is some ijtihad maghluk, yeah. In the Shia, that is not happen. And for Mrs. I. Fatimah, question 3. If we look the term jihad, radical, fundamental, in my view, basically it's a natural word. Yeah? Even if we look at history, the word jihad is so good for Islamic struggle. But in the current time, we look, this term is having negative connotation. Why it is can happen in our world, yeah, our time. Is there any effort from West, maybe Islamophobia, or what? Maybe Mrs. Aifatma can explain to me and to us about this. Thank you for Mr. Rizky Amdillah.
Jajanul Jannah, he has 3 questions. First question addressed to Dr. Rahmawati Hussein. The question is about the spirit of Muhammadiyah in our soul. It's true, Dr. Jaja. Please welcome Dr. Rahmawati Hussein to respond to answer the questions.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for the interesting question. If I may not take him, as you mentioned, the question is, the spirit is in our soul. That's why the I'm discussing how the moderation in Islam or moderate in practice, because we already internalize the value. We already use the values for such a long time. So internalizing the norm for helping people, helping other, is become the spirit for giving in Muhammadiyah. So this is not something new. The moderation is not something constructed. Yeah. So I'm not talking about the construction of moderation, but this is like the founder developed or first establishing orphanages, yeah, panti asuhan, on hospitals to help. This is the spirit that not thinking of constructing, but the spirit of implementing the values. So I agree that in moderating or the moderate Islam within Muhammadiyah is not something new. It's not something constructed, but it is something that's already intrinsic values. So something that already internalized by the member, by the board, yeah. So they are not asking whether this is if we want to help, especially in Muhammadiyah Disaster Management Center, if they are going to deploy to other places, they are not asked whether it is Muslim or not, whether they are Muhammadiyah or not, yeah, whether they are also, we also were helping the affected community during the conflict of Shia and Sidoarjo. Then people asking, is Muhammadiyah already turned into Shia, for example? So we are not talking about the construct of Islamic value, but we are based on the principal value that we believe that helping others is the value of Islam. So yeah, that's what I want to comment. So the moderation of Islam in Muhammadiyah is not a construction or a new idea, but something that is already intrinsically be in Muhammadiyah member. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Rahmawati Hussein, for the response and answers. Next question delivered to Dr. Izul Rahman about why Hamka is so familiar with Shia.
Well, I think there are 2 points in Dr. Jaja's comments. Yeah. First, about our contemporary phenomenon, where Shia is or has been often blamed for this thing and this thing, even for political development or for a certain development inside or outside Indonesia. Yeah, perhaps we still remember, yeah, when the crane in Masjidil Haram was failed, yeah. And then some reports or some message in social media then blame Shia for the case. Yeah. So I think in Muhammadiyah, yeah, perhaps in an intellectual cycle or academic cycle, perhaps we can still even find certain tendency to avoid Shia or to blame Shia. Yeah, I just want to mention one case here from my own experience. Yeah, of course, as a researcher of Quran interpretation, I am trying to be always open, even to non-Sunni resources. But when I quote At-Taba is al-Mizan in the draft, I was preparing for Tafsir At-Tanwir. And some gave advice, yeah, not to use At-Taba al-Mizan in Tafsir At-Tanwir. So, well, on the other hand, yeah, perhaps the use of some other references like Sayyid Qutb's, sometimes it's okay, sometimes not. Yeah, okay. My point is that even in intellectual cycle, yeah, within the Muhammadiyah, sometimes we are not fully open. Yeah? We are not fully open to Muslim diversity. Yeah, we are not fully open. Sometimes it is based on the argument that we need to make grassroots, to make people on the grassroots, not to hate us, not to hate Muhammadiyah, not to hate our understanding of the Quran. Sometimes that is the argument for avoiding non-mainstream resources, for Muhammadiyah works or Muhammadiyah books, like Tafsir At-Tanwir. So, but the case at the level of grassroots, is perhaps more dangerous, because everything is connected, or people associate, certain developments in politics, in social developments, to Shia, just as they have associated the things to communism, to communism, liberalism, and even perhaps but sometimes to the Western, okay. So communism, liberalism, Shiism are trying to offend us, to destroy us. That's the people, the imagination of the people in the grassroots. Of course, as intellectuals, as academicians, we need to enlighten. Of course, to enlighten with a careful approach. Sometimes enlightening people is not fruitful, because we are careless. We are careless. We use a careless approach to enlighten people. So in social media, of course, there are many developments that are not compatible with our promotion of modern Islam, with our promotion of al-wasatiyah. But of course, this needs our responses, our responses, meaning that actually we need to be productive, just as Hamka was quite productive within his life, throughout his life, with 100, more than 100 books, or of course, actually we need to make efforts, to be like Hamka. If not 100, why not 50? If it's not 50, why not 25 books? Pak Jaja, how many books have you written now? Then the question is that, because okay, we thought being, of course, a publication does, in our contemporary world, publication is not merely by publishing in a book format. Publication can mean, in our contemporary situations, can mean to publish articles for social media. So the people can share our writings. So that's my my remark for Pak Jajas. Of course, we need to renew, or to refresh, or to make the situation within Muhammadiyah community, Muhammadiyah members, is conducive, is compatible enough with our promotion of justice, our promotion of tolerance, our promotion of moderation. So in 2015, actually, Muhammadiyah has came up with a recommendation to build dialogues among Muslims, as a response to Muslim diversity. But afterwards, of course, still, even the writings written by some activists, some preachers of Muhammadiyah, often approach Sunni Shi'i difference in a narrower, in an in narrow-mindedly. I mean, but not with an open-minded approach here. So, I think there are some influences from outside as well. I mean, the relation between intellectual networks between Saudi and Indonesia, I think, has helped the anti-Shia campaign in Indonesia, including in Muhammadiyah. That's my hypothesis. Of course, not all. Sometimes, the anti-Shia campaign actually was quite long in Indonesia, but HAMKA lived in 1960s, 1970s, but he could come up with open-minded approach to deal with Sunni and Shia difference, I think. My implicit point is that we need to learn from HAMKA, to take lessons from HAMKA in dealing with the internal Muslim diversity. The second point is related to HAMKA's familiarity with Shia. Of course, Pak Jaja proposed an argument that it is perhaps HAMKA's closeness with philosophy that makes HAMKA quite familiar with Shia. Actually, HAMKA was quite familiar with many schools of thought, within Islam, inside and outside Islam, actually. HAMKA, of course, we know that HAMKA often cites Greek philosophy as well, Western thinkers as well. So HAMKA, it is not actually surprising that HAMKA was familiar with Shia. What might be surprising for people, especially at the grassroots level, is that HAMKA was talking about Shia in a very open-minded attitude, open-minded approach. HAMKA himself has been used as, or has been perceived as, a champion of let's say conservatism, in our contemporary situations. People cite HAMKA to promote a certain degree of intolerance toward non-Muslims or non-Sunnis, into these situations. But actually, HAMKA can be read differently, and I think I would argue that HAMKA actually should actually be read in his capacity as a free thinker, as a cosmopolitan reformer. That HAMKA cannot be suited with a certain narrow context of certain Sunnism in Indonesia, for instance, because he is rational, he used many resources, he wrote a lot about many scholars from different schools in Islam. So I think we need to make people aware of this. HAMKA actually is greater than what has been imagined by people in the grassroots today. HAMKA is not only a scholar for a certain stream for certain current in Indonesian Islam, but he is a great scholar. So Hamka's closeness with philosophy, I think it is again something that we need to learn, because today people they are not only far from philosophy, they are also far from intellectual works. Okay, on any intellectual works. So because authority in today's situations, in our contemporary situations, is something that quite challenged by the phenomenon facilitated by the advancement of technology. So we are quite difficult to defend the authority. People are no longer do not depend on authority any longer. But this makes the situations worse and worse. So we need to help fix these situations, I think, by promoting HAMKA, promoting HAMKA more intensively or more extensively. HAMKA is not only cited by radicals, HAMKA is also cited by liberals, the liberals. So sometimes there are arguments whether HAMKA is quite inclusive enough, in terms of pluralism, in terms of democracy, in terms of the relationship between Islam and Indonesia, the state and the region. Of course, there are debates, but this means that, I will argue, this means that HAMKA's spectrum, HAMKA's thinking, HAMKA's thought is too broad, to be claimed only by certain groups within or outside Muhammad. Thank you. That's my response to Pak Jaja.
Thank you very much, Dr. Izzar Rahman, for the answers. Before we step on to the next question for that addressed to Dr. I. Fatimah Nur Fuad, I read the questions in chat room delivered in Arabic language from Andri Gunawan. السؤال للدكتور أي فاطمة نور فؤاد. السؤال يعني كيف تطبيق مميزات أو تطبيق مميزات بواسطة أو وسيطة الإسلام في جماعة التطرف الديني. هذا السؤال الثاني لدكتور أي فاطمة نور فؤاد. ثم السؤال الثالث, the third questions from Dinil Abrar, delivered in Indonesian languages. Warga kota, I translate to English. City residents have different thoughts and challenges with people in the village. So the question, how much the da'wah touched these two sides? What should be done for the da'i? Please welcome Dr. Fatimah Nur Fuad.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Rizky. Yeah, for responding to the first question from Pak Jaja about neutral terminology or terms of jihad and radical, I agree that it is the neutral term in our Islamic tradition or Islamic concept, because it is contain the positive purposes. However, there is a shifting of using this terminology. It is no longer in positive way because radicals and jihad, as we know, there is a group of jihadists, as I mentioned earlier, and also radicalists, extremists. It is content of negative purpose. Because they are using the weapon, using violence to harm other people, and this is of course contrast with the spirit of Islam about the protection of life, or hifdun nafas, as a part of maqasidus syariah. So protection of life or hifdun nafas, it's to all human life. So it's one of the overriding goals and purpose of Islam and Sharia. So human life of all religion, race, and ethnicity must be safeguarded as a matter of priority. So Al-Quran say, for instance, one who saves the life of another, it would be as if he saved the life of the whole of humankind. The Quran in ayat 35, surah 5, yeah. The text also declares in the same verses, and one who kills a human being without the latter being guilty of murder or corruption in the land, it would be as if he has killed the whole humankind. It is from the Quran. I think hadith also contain teaching about how to protect other lives. For instance, Al-Bukhari and Muslim, the two most authoritative collection of hadith, have recorded the following hadith. Man hamila alayna silla falaysa minna, man salla alayna saif falaysa minna. So one who raise arms or sword against us cease to be one of us. In another hadith, it is also explained, kullul muslim alal muslim haramun damuhu wa maluhu wa irduhu. So all that belong to a Muslim is forbidden to other Muslim, his blood, his property, and his honor. In terms of radical and terrorist groups and also jihadist group, they trying not to protect other human life, but mostly in terms of human relation that make negative impact to human relation and also to social harmony. So this is contrast with the spirit of Islam. I think that's why the term jihad and radical no longer in positive way, because of the attitudes of a few, very little of who doing radical and extreme movement using the weapon to harm other people. That I think the answer for Pak Jaja hopefully can be understood, ya Pak. Okay, and the second question in Arabic, it is very long. I haven't been used Arabic. So, kaifa tatbiq wasatiyah Islam fi jamaah mada?
في جماعة التطرف الديني.
في جماعة التطرف الديني. نعم. شكرا إلى الأسئلة من Pak Andri ya, Pak Andri. Pak Andri Gunawan. My answer will be in English. My answer will be
bilughal Arabiyah.
Ya, terjemah Pak Jaja. Ya, the implementation of moderate Islam to the specific group who doing a tatarruf way. I think we need to follow the guidance back to the Quran and Hadith, and also the tradition of Rasulullah and companion of Rasulullah, sahabat. Many of their attitude and then their example we have to follow them in our current time. In the Quran, for instance, there are so many explanation and including in Islam about how to implement wasatiyah Islam. Just now, for instance, I mentioned earlier that Islam highlighting the gradual approach in social reformation. So it's not in radical way of change. So the change in our society, it's need gradual steps, gradual consideration, considering many aspects of our social, our diversity, our multicultural situation. And also in the Quran also say that we have to build a better dialogue, internal dialogue, and also active engagement with other people, other countries from all different civilization, for instance. And Al-Quran say to implement wasatiyah Islam, we need to follow, for instance, wajadilhum billati hiya ahsan. So we respond to many phenomenon or trend in our society with a better ways according to Islamic teaching. So not using any violence or of course here billati hiya ahsan. It's not only in terms of speaking, but also in terms of attitude, policy, and so on and so forth. And the other approach or step is considering maslahat and mafsadah. So because our society or our jamaah atau taruf ad-dini, they have very strong basis to choose this kind of way, this kind of group. Of course, we need also to offer very strong way, strong steps, strong approach to deal with them. And other things is I think the same maqasidu syariah still important to deal with this group. I think that's the answer for Pak Andri.
السؤال الثالث
yes, from Pak Dinil ya.
Yes.
Yeah, from Pak Dinil, this is in Turkish language. I have no idea at all about the Turkish bahasa, but Pak Dinil translate it into Indonesian. How the moderate dakwah can reach both urban and rural community, yes, in both cities, big cities, and also in small town, yeah, small town. I think we have, for instance, Muhammadiyah and other moderate organizations such as NU, Persis. They have branches from the top layers of the leadership in urban, yeah, in the central like PP Muhammadiyah to the ranting, to the small town. So we have pusat, we have also ranting. But between pusat and ranting, we have also wilayah, daerah, yeah, PWM, PDM, until ranting. So this can be used to transfer the moderate values among moderate organization to the grassroots of society. Of course, this is only effective if they follow the organization, not only effective if they follow the organization, but how the organization can spread their dakwah values, their dakwah activities into other people who are outside the follower of this moderate organization. So it can be distribute the values into as many as people in both urban and rural areas. Thank you very much, Pak Rizky.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Aifatimah Nur Fuad. Also, there is questions by Arabic language addressed to Dr. Izzar Rahman from Akhina Ardianto Bayu. السؤال للدكتور عز الرحمن. السؤال يعني ما هو الأسباب التي تؤدي إلى التعصب الديني في إندونيسيا الخصوص؟ هكذا السؤال أستاذ إزة.
Well, okay, thank you. شكرا جزيلا. ما هو الأسباب التي تؤدي إلى التعصب الديني في إندونيسيا؟ هناك الأسباب المتنوعة of course. إذا أردت أن تعرف الأسباب بالعربية لكم أن تسأل إلى دكتور عي. She is a graduate of Al-Azhar, while I am a graduate of UIN Ciputat. So of course, I'd like to answer in Japanese if I can, in English, I mean, to make the conference international, really international. Okay. The factors of fanaticism, religious fanaticism in Indonesia, of course, there are many to mention, but I mean the most, okay, this is only my hypothesis, the most dangerous factor is the combination between illiteracy or between the lack of quality education, let's say, the lack of quality education or illiteracy, and political interests that take benefit from the phenomenon of fanaticism itself. I think the combination between these factors, these two factors are very dangerous when the people are still quite literate, and I talk about literacy in its broader and contemporary context, in broader context in our contemporary world, of course, not literate knowing the alphabets, of course, not knowing the letters, but literacy in its broader meaning, while people are illiterate, and political powers, political interests, political ideas tends to take benefit from the people literacy. This is the dangerous, I think the most dangerous combination that explain why fanaticism is still here, or why fanaticism is still here and there in our country, despite the fact that Indonesia is renowned for its tolerance, for its harmony, for its respect for diversity. Muslims in Indonesia, in particular, are said or are renowned for successfully adapting democracy in an Islamic milieu or an Islamic context. These are Muslims, but actually, of course, we can still have fanaticism is there, intolerance is there, extremism is there, of course. But of course, this is not an exclusive phenomenon in Indonesia, meaning that it's not only in Indonesia, we can still find everywhere as well, yeah, of course. But in Indonesian context, we can explain that we are in a greater need of quality education. Yeah, Indonesians, I think Indonesian younger generations only 5 to 10% of them, yeah, who studied at undergraduate level, meaning that we are still very very in backwardness. Yeah, we are left behind. Yeah, by those countries, those people in other countries who are uh, who are more educated, let's say. Okay, so we need improve our education, but of course we also need that our politicians, they can give examples on how how to implement, yeah, our local wisdom, our values, yeah, our Nusantara values, or our Islamic, yeah, values in our life. Yeah. I think this will help us to make fanaticism is not influential enough, yeah, in our social life, our socio-political life. That's my short or my brief response to Pak Ardianto. Thank you. Syukran.
Ya, ahsan ya doktor. Baik, jazakallah khair. Thank you very much, Dr. Izzam. I think I'm agree with that. That's one of the factors التي تؤدي إلى تعصب الديني is lack of education or political interest. And the next questions, Bro Yasin Azhari, please welcome. Please introduce yourself before you deliver your questions.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
I'm Yasin Ajhari from Kerawang,
yes,
as graduate from Sanata Dharma University of Yogyakarta. My question, especially to Mr. Iza, that I have story from almarhumah Dr. Alia Hamka long time ago. I met with her that Dr. Alia say Professor Dr. Hamka is very tolerant and in their family, and they when they live in block A in there is Catholic, there is the other community except Muslim. My question is, but when they become the chairman of the Scholar Muslim Council MUI, all of other is very chant when 190 65 from in new era began. In the other opinion, the scholar Muslim, the other scholar Muslim say that Hamka is intolerant person in opinion because they exclusive Muslim from Muhammadiyah movement. But before 165, as Hamka is very, the person as we know that this contemporary issue is religious pluralism. They construct in the communities and this value that I get that story from Dr. Alia Hamka. How about your opinion, Mr. Iza? This is religious pluralism before 165 HAMKA on religious pluralism. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Bro Yasin Azhari. I directly address your question to Dr. Izal Rahman. How about your opinion, the two story from Dr. Alia? You want to respond directly, Dr. Izal Rahman?
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Well, okay. Perhaps I do not really understand Brother Yasin's question.
Can I repeat my question, the simple question?
Well, okay. Try to make it clear, please.
My question is, HAMKA is the scholar Muslim is a very religious person and have the in bahasa. Can I translate in bahasa Indonesia? In bahasa sebelum pasca 65 pandangan HAMKA itu dalam konteks sekarang sangat religius, mendukung pluralisme religius, meskipun makna itu agak kontroversi saat ini. Tetapi setelah pasca 65 ketika mendapat diangkat menjadi MUI, ada kepentingan-kepentingan politik yang mendistorsi itu dibawa ke agenda 65. Nah, simpel seperti itu. Thank you, Mr. Riza.
Yeah, okay. Okay, it is clearer now, yeah. Well, okay, I think HAMKA, yes, HAMKA wrote many books, and people can read his books in or with different perspectives, yeah, of course, yeah. And HAMKA's life is shows or illustrates wide-ranging activities. Of course, people can also read his life differently. That's my first point, yeah, as a response to Brother Yasin's questions. Yeah, so it is not surprising if people can have a different perspective, even for the single HAMKA. I mean, HAMKA, of course, is only one scholar, but his perspectives can be interpreted or can be read, yeah, differently by people today as well, of course, yeah. But of course, I would argue that HAMKA's life as well as HAMKA's works, yeah, should and could and should, yeah, be read in in a more objective perspective that enable us to look at how HAMKA combines between let's say religiosity, yeah, or being a pious person, yeah, and the open thought, yeah, open thinking, I mean open-mindedness, yeah, and tolerance, yeah. So HAMKA is perhaps an example of how the more religious persons is, the more open-minded he is. Okay, my argument can be wrong, but I like to say, I mean, I have many reasons to say that. I mean, HAMKA, at the same, HAMKA was very religious, of course, but at the same time, he was a Democrat. Yeah, he can accept, yeah, the relationship between Islam and the state, in a more particular context that is compatible with the Indonesian people's situations. Even though he, of course, sometimes try to argue that Islam is the best for Indonesia, but actually Hamka can accept the plurality of Indonesian people, so he can agree with the Pancasila as the best foundation of Indonesian state, as the basis of Indonesian states. But Yasin's questions is more related to the development within Hamka's life. I do not see it actually, because let me give you an example that shows Hamka was still tolerant, was still open-minded in his in the end of his years, his life. In 1970s, Hamka received 3 books, 3 CE Tafsir books. He had finished Tafsir al-Azhar, but afterwards, someone gave him 3 CE Tafsirs. Okay, and then Hamka was eager to revise his Tafsir al-Azhar, to incorporate these 3 tafsirs, Al-Mizan, Al-Bayan, Ala Rahman. So this, I think it was during 1970s, because Hamka met with his friend in 1973. So he revised Al-Azhar based on his connection with these 3 CE tafsirs, meaning that Hamka was still open-minded during these last years, during 1970s. I think, but perhaps this example cannot be accurate enough to answer Brother Yasin's questions, but at least it shows us that Hamka is still open. In 1952, he published the Tepi Sungai Dajlah, where he gave some narratives on CE school of thought, as a religious group within Islam. So he was quite familiar in that year, during the years. But in 1950s, 70s, then he again he can accommodate CE literature to be parts of his references. And it is interesting to note that Hamka compares CE tafsir with Mu'tazilah tafsir. For him, we can accept Mu'tazilah tafsir, let alone CE tafsir. Kalau tafsir Mu'tazilah aja diterima, apalagi Syiah. Jadi bahasa Hamka itu implies that Mu'tazilah is even more far from our own position, when CE is closer. Meaning that Hamka still gives examples of tolerance and open-mindedness in his in the end of his lifetime. I think that's my argument.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Izra.
Thank you very much, Dr. Izzul Rahman. Okay, thank you very much, Bro Yasin, for the questions. Okay, well, my beloved audience, we have around about 25 minutes left until 12 AM. Please welcome if you have any questions. Is there any questions, participants? If no questions, we close earlier before 12 a.m. I think it's enough. Okay. Yeah, dear brothers and sisters, we're waiting for the questions. If no question, we close earlier before 12 p.m. So we thank to the all speakers, Dr. Rahmawati, Dr. Iza, and Dr. Ai Fatima. Hopefully what we hear, we listen today is very useful, enlightenment, and our presence today is record as good as deed. For me, myself, I apologize for any shortcoming. Hopefully our conference will benefit to the community and giving the solution to the problems. Thank you very much. I return it to Mrs. Farida.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Rizky Amrillah, for being the moderator today. Terima kasih untuk Bapak Rizky Amrillah yang telah menjadi moderator untuk sesi yang pertama di hari kedua UHAMKA International Conference on Moderate Islam Discourses and Practices. Bapak Ibu, para hadirin, para peserta, dan juga para presenter yang kami hormati, setelah ini kita akan memasuki sesi break, dan selanjutnya, and then we will have our parallel session at 1 p.m. And then we will divide all the presenters into eight breakout rooms. Then every presenter may choose the breakout according to the parallel session. Parallel session 1 will be facilitated by Ibu Nur Melinda Lestari. Parallel session 2 will be facilitated by Farida Haryati UICOMS, and then parallel session 3 will be moderated by Dr. Purwidianto, and then parallel session 4 will be facilitated by Bapak Muhammad Dwi Fajri, and then parallel session 5 will be facilitated by Bapak Dinil Abrol Sultani. Parallel session 6 will be facilitated by Dr. Jaja Nurjana, and then parallel session 7 will be facilitated by Bapak Amiruddin MPD, and then the last session, parallel session 8, will be facilitated by Ibu Dr. Busniarti MA. Ladies and gentlemen, now we have completed our first session for today, for the second day. The first UICOMS, which is organized by UHAMKA, and then we close the session by reciting Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Billahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam
On the next session.
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Mrs. Rahmawati, Mr. Iza, and
Thank you, Pak Iza.
Terima kasih semuanya.
Selamat.
Ya.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih Bu Ama,
Congratulations
Pak
to
Iza.
UHAMKA, LPPIK, and FAI.
Mbak Ama, terima kasih.
Bu Ai.
Terima kasih semuanya.
Ya, sampai ketemu.
Terima kasih Bapak-bapak, Ibu-ibu.
Santosa.